Thanks for watching this interview with Dustin Rudolph, the plant-based pharmacist. You can check out his website and his Facebook page and his book in the description below. I'll leave links. In 5 years of being on this lifestyle, not a lot surprises me, but reading this book, it was a wealth of knowledge, and I read a lot of stuff that I didn't know before, so I highly recommend this book. This is just one snippet that Dustin and I spoke about. If you'd like to watch the entire interview or another topic that we spoke about, you can click on the link to the full interview in the description below. Thank you very much. In your book, which I'll get your book out in a minute from the bookshelf, but in your book you say that, and in 4+ years of being on this lifestyle, I've experienced this, is that for every studies come out and they kind of go viral on all these Facebook groups that I'm part of, where it says for every study that says, a study says that bacon is good for you, and then studies come out that say bacon is bad for you. How is one supposed to decipher and filter through this, conflicting information? I mean, for that, there's no gray area. I mean, it's like, this is bad, this study said this is bad, this study said this is good. What can people do to filter through this information that is so starkly in contrast to one another?
I think that's a great question, Ian, because a lot of people out there that are consumers of health, and they don't necessarily have the background in medicine or science. And it is very confusing when you look at the news and they're saying one thing one night and then the next night they're saying something completely the opposite. And you're like, I don't know who to believe.
Right.
So I think I'm just going to eat whatever I want.
Right.
And even for those of us in the medical field and scientific community, it still takes years of practice to get it right. And I'm still learning, and I'll be learning 30 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
But what I look for when I look at studies is that, first of all, who's funding the study? So you know that if it's a drug company funding their own drug study, then it's been shown that there's more favorable results for that drug on those studies as opposed to independent studies done.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have the Beef Cattlemen's Association sponsoring a study on beef and health, obviously they're going to want to have something positive to say about their product because they don't want to hurt sales.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that you got to look at.
So
and that
in other words,
that
that's called a conflict of interest, just to kind of get that out there, right?
conflict of interest.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that any study that has a potential conflict of interest is completely worthless.
Right.
And you just throw it out.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that at all. You can still get some valuable lessons, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. You have to take it with knowing that there's potential for bias here, and there might be some erroneous results that are reported, especially if you don't look at all the details. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is I really have tried to do my best to find the organizations and the people and the researchers out there who don't have ties to industry and regularly publish stuff as unbiased as it can get. And a couple of really good ones is thennt.com, and that's THEN as in Nancy, as in N as in Nancy, T, thennt.com. They go over all kinds of different medications and other conventional therapies and different medical conditions, and they really give you the unbiased version of, is this good for you or is this bad for you with this drug? Another one is the Cochrane Collaboration. They're a not-for-profit organization. They strictly prohibit funding from the medical device and pharmaceutical companies, and they will do unbiased research and put reviews out there, Cochrane reviews out there. So that's nice to see too. And then there's really good physicians and other researchers out there putting forth unbiased information, like Michael Greger with nutritionfacts.org and John McDougall, Caldwell Esselstyn, all those guys. I've really found that they're very, very good at, looking at the information and fairly evaluating it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's just a couple tidbits there that I kind of look for, and it's a matter of continuing to look at the research, and then you also got to look at in the studies is, are they say if you test for cholesterol levels and the consumption of milkshakes, is that going to raise your cholesterol level? And so you get done with the study and it says, well, it raises your cholesterol level a little bit, but that shouldn't cause any harm. But it didn't test for death rates, or heart disease rates or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you're just having a study that looks at numbers, and nobody really cares about their cholesterol level if it weren't for the cholesterol level being high kills you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So what really people care about is whether they're going to die or not, or whether they're going to be crippled from a disease or not.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I could care less what my cholesterol level is, but I care if I die of heart disease.
Right.
And they are correlated. So, you got to look at studies. What are they testing?
Right.
What are the end results?
Something I like to encourage people to understand about research, and I'd like you to briefly touch on this, is something called the body of evidence. Over the last, we'll say 20 or 30 years, more and more research has been coming out pointing towards food as medicine, pointing towards cholesterol as being a marker of either someone who is healthy or someone who is not. And so if by chance one study comes out that happens to say, oh, cholesterol isn't really a marker, it really isn't that important, it may move this body of evidence a tick back towards the side where it says cholesterol is not good, but it doesn't necessarily take this body of evidence, which is hundreds of studies, and throw them all in the garbage. Is that correct?
Right. Exactly. That's a great point. Yeah, you got a great point there, where you can't just take any one study and go, well, that's the Bible.
Right.
So that study says that's the Bible for everything. You got to look at the magnitude of all the evidence, like you said. You want to look at observational studies, epidemiological studies, population-based studies. You want to look at interventional studies where they actually take people and split them up into two groups and, do whatever intervention they're doing, and then follow them and see exactly what happens to them, on a pill or on a certain diet or whatever they're testing. And then you take all that information combined and you look at trends. You look at, is cholesterol important, and does it lead to heart attacks, and does it cause death, or is this overblown, and what does all the science say about that? And that can be a massive undertaking, especially for people who don't do this for a living and aren't in this field, because every day I'm reading stuff,
right,
studies or reports or whatever it is, and I've been doing this for years. And for somebody who's just off the street and not in this field to maybe look at one study every 10 years, it's almost impossible to get a good feel for all the scientific literature.
Right. And just to add to that is someone who people think they read one study and think they're an expert on subject XYZ, and that's not necessarily how it works. It certainly isn't how it works, because if someone reads a study on pharmaceuticals, it doesn't mean you went to school to be a pharmacist. It doesn't mean that they're smarter than you or they're now an expert. And so also the point you just made is even more of a reason to look at the resources like the NNT.com, the Cochrane Collaborative, sources like Dr. Greger and Nutrition Facts, because that's what those organizations are for. They're for average people, let's say average people who don't read literature, who don't have the time. Oh, you can just go to nutritionfacts.org and get a summary of what the literature says.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.